Welcome to the Backpacking Light podcast, where we discuss the philosophy and skills of traveling light so you can experience the outdoors with more comfort, more safety, and more enjoyment. I'm Ryan Jordan.
And I'm Andrew Marshall, and we are your hosts on this lifelong journey of doing more with less as we venture into wild places and empty spaces.
Look for me in the mountains, where walking has a way of pulling you to your peace of mind every day.
So today's episode is just a little bit of a different format than what we've been doing. Ryan, why don't you give us a breakdown on what we have in store for the day?
Yeah, so we're entering into the summer season, so we're going to experiment with a few different shorter versions of the episode before returning to our more technical long form in the fall. And today we are interviewing some of our wilderness adventures guides, and we did our guides training trip up in the Absaroka-Beartooth Wilderness in June. And on the drive back, the four of us who were guiding that trip and training the other guides were having a discussion about the kind of the definitions, the philosophy, and some of the values and benefits of ultralight backpacking. So it's kind of a roundtable discussion discussing some of those things.
And who are some of the voices that we'll be hearing from? Can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, so in addition to myself, there's Kevin Fletcher, our Wilderness Adventures Director, as well as guides Dan Wielenga and Adam Van Zee.
All right, well, without further ado, let's get to the discussion.
Okay, so the first question I want to ask is, how do you define ultralight backpacking?
So you could probably define it in a number of different ways, but if I had to define it, I would define it as, I think Adam mentioned, like simplifying things, but also in a weight range. Again, if you had to put a number on it, 15 to 25 pounds, and simplifying what you carry. I don't think it has to mean having the gear from the different companies, but just gear that works for you, that's lighter, that's simpler, and probably within a 15 to 25 pound weight range.
So one thing that's obvious to me is I see somebody on the trail who's carrying a little pack, and maybe they're carrying 20 or 25 pounds, and it's obvious they're using lightweight techniques and skills and philosophy. But then you see somebody who's carrying 50 pounds, but maybe they're out for 3 weeks. What do you say to someone like that? So I'll give you an example. So when we did our trip up in the Arctic, we packed 3 weeks worth of food. Our base weights were 7 pounds, and we had 40 plus pounds of food, 40 to 50 pounds of food. So because we were starting with 50 to 60 pound packs, does that mean we weren't ultralight?
No. And that's one thing I probably should have mentioned at the time is, it all depends on how long you're going to be out. So, yeah, if you're going to be out for 3 weeks, 45 pounds of food is probably pretty legitimate.
So then you've got the flip side of this, and the traditional backpacker might go out for a weekend and carry 50 pounds. He cuts his handle off his toothbrush, so he's got a really light toothbrush. Does that mean he's practicing ultralight backpacking?
I'd say congratulations on a good step. Get that toothbrush handle right off of there.
And that illustrates what I'm trying to get at, is at what point does it cross over between something traditional and something where you're intentionally applying ultralight techniques?
I think in that way, Ryan, as you're trying to draw out, I think ultralight backpacking has so much to do with a methodology, so much more to do with a methodology that is applied to the various aspects of backpacking. And so, for instance, your situation in the Arctic, you are not doing anything differently than you would normally do. Your expedition length changed, and so you had to have more food, but you were applying the same methodology that you did for any other trip, regardless of length. So I would say ultralight backpacking is more about a methodology that applies certain skills, techniques, certain types of gear that allow you to simplify the entire system, allow you to get away with a lot less, both in terms of gear and even sometimes planning. The whole system is streamlined and less involved, and you're able to come away with so much more because you're not focused on the gear and the stuff you're carrying, but the experience itself.
So there's an element of simplicity to that, and by reducing complexity, by nature, you're going to reduce the pack weight because simpler gear probably weighs less. Yeah? So that would be one aspect of the methodology, is simplicity. What do you guys think?
And I would say the simplicity is a big piece of it. I also think that just being able to have items that are multi-use, and like the system that I was using with hammock camping and trying to figure out a lot of preparation and trying to find a system that is simple but works together.
I thought it was interesting when Dan mentioned the experience, because I've often heard you even say, Ryan, I'm willing to add a few more ounces or a few more because of the experience. And sometimes even what Adam said, simplicity. So simplicity and experience to me, because the individual who's carrying 50 pounds but cuts the handle off his toothbrush or his toothpaste, because that would cut off some weight too, to take out some toothpaste.
That's why I use baking soda.
That's right. There you go. Good. But I think it's trying to get to where you want a better experience. And I think going lightweight helps you have a better experience. And if your first step is, hey, I don't need the handle to my toothbrush, it's probably not ultra light, but it's a good step. And then maybe as you go throughout, and even you, Ryan, as you've gone throughout, you've adjusted to where maybe you've added weight with something because it adds to your experience. It might even simplify things, like you guys all use tarps, but for me, I'm maybe not quite there yet, so I just use the lightweight tent, but it actually simplified it for me. So it's simple, and it made it for a better experience for me where I'm at this time.
So there's an ideology in the practice of minimalism, and a lot of people think minimalism is about just eliminating everything that isn't necessary. But there's an increasing gravitational pull towards the ideology that it's not just about what's necessary or not necessary, but what adds value. And I think that's what you're getting at, Kevin, is what adds to your experience. So is there a point, because I've had this discussion with other traditional backpackers before, and they're convinced that every single item in their pack and their base weight might be 30 or 40 pounds adds to their experience. What do you have to say to those guys?
I know what I would say to him. I would say to him, if I would have him evaluate each item and find out, I would say start with one item and see what you can do to, in some cases, maybe eliminate the item, or in some cases, do some research and find out what they can do. Because, to them, they might need that item, or it might add to their experience, but I bet there's a way that they could either lighten the weight of that item or potentially not even take that item. So just evaluate the item, even if it was this, their cooking system. Look at their cooking system. I bet there's a way that they could lighten it, and maybe not.
And I think that, when you're hiking side by side, and not everybody's ultraweight, or maybe some people in the party are committed and they've worked hard over years of creating a system that is ultralight. and you're backpacking with someone who is not. I think when you take your first water break, I think it's a good indicator of just how different the two are, because within a lot of times the ultralight world, you'll stop on the trail and have somebody grab your water for you if you can't reach it, or grab it if you can, depending on the system you're using, and you grab a sip. As where in the traditional, you have your 5 guys roll into that first little break spot, and the first thing they do is everybody throws their packs on the ground, and everybody takes a deep breath, and wow, that feels so good to have my pack off. And in the ultralight world, you stop and you keep your pack on, because it's not really that big of an issue, and you're not like terribly driven to just get it off your back and give your legs a huge rest. And I think giving somebody the opportunity to see the difference like that is probably, I feel like it would be kind of eye-opening.
And I think, Ryan, to go back to your question, what would you say to someone like that? I think the first thing I would say to someone like that is ask them why they think they need all those things. Why it is that they believe all of that extra weight and all of those items are going to contribute to their experience. Likely, the issue will be they've never done it any other way, or never tried to do it any other way. And so in that case, education, I think, would be the name of the game to help them understand they may not need nearly as much as they might think.
I know for me personally, the idea that you need certain pieces of gear for certain experiences is very real. And so in the early days when I was a teenager, I felt like I needed to bring rock climbing gear, and gear for gourmet cooking, and gear for fishing, and gear for photography. And all that stuff adds up really quick. And when I started leaving some of this stuff behind, I realized that it opened up new opportunities to have different types of experiences. So a simpler kit may not give you the flexibility to go as deep in some of the experiences you're giving up, but it certainly opens up new doors for experience that I think have completely revolutionized how I enjoy the backcountry. So I feel better out there with a lighter pack. I can travel more miles, go places that I wouldn't normally go with a heavier pack, and things like that. So one thing about ultralight backpacking that's really appealing is the lighter pack opens up new and different types of experiences for me. Have you guys felt that at all?
Absolutely. I think one of the most significant experiences early on in my lightweight backpacking journey has been being able to go with my wife on a trip that she could have never done if she had been carrying the typical amount of weight. And so right there, that provided an opportunity for me to spend very quality time with her over the course of 4 days. And we just wouldn't have done that before we had some of these more ultralight options, some of these lightweight options.
So let's transition into my next question, and that is, since you started practicing ultralight backpacking intentionally, how has it evolved for you?
Like the gear?
Anything.
It's made it more fun.
How so?
I think it makes it more fun because it adds a whole new perspective to it. It's before it's just like, okay, we're gonna go, here's where we're gonna go, here's the gear we need. And so it's always fun to research where you're going and what kind of an experience you're gonna have where you go, but it's also fun to say, here's where we're going, and be intentional about what I'm gonna bring. I'm going to the mountains, I'm going to the Beartooth. So if I'm going to the Beartooth, I'm gonna need, bear spray, I'm gonna need something to store my food in for the bears, and this is the kind of sleeping system I'm gonna need. Instead of just, here's my sleeping bag, here's my sleeping system, And if I'm going to go to the desert, well, I can eliminate this and I can eliminate this, or I'm going to need this. And my sleeping system can be, here's the temperature range, and so I don't need this bag, and I can research what kind of gear's out there. It's kind of fun to research what kind of gear's out there because, it's not always the big boys that are having that gear. When I say the big boys, most people probably know who I'm talking about, but it's other little cottage companies that are making this kind of gear, and they're experimenting with it, and it's fun to see the potential and what's out there. So just the research of it makes it a better, more fun experience. I mean, not to mention that it's lighter, and so that experience is more fun too.
Yeah, I think the research is an outcome of your desire to be more intentional about applying a specific kit of gear to a specific situation, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I like the idea of being intentional. I like systems, and I think when I first started getting into ultralight backpacking, I talked with a lot of other people and read and just researched, and the first thing to go was the backpack. And so I went to a backpack with no frame, no structure whatsoever, and along with that, obviously I had to do a lot of other ultralight things to make that work, because you can't just change your backpack and still carry 40 pounds. And so with that, changed my shelter situation and went to tarp, just a flat tarp, and I really liked the versatility of that. And but those first two things that I switched in my system, and then going to a light sleeping bag as well, and that was kind of the first transition to kind of jumping into the world of ultralight, and like we've kind of talked about with the other questions, just how much more enjoyable it was to just cruise in and not constantly be exhausted, out of breath, and you can just move. You can move quick, and you can see so much more. And instead of pounding yourself into the ground trying to get somewhere, I just feel like with way less weight and the new methods and just learning new things. I love to learn new, and I love to try new things, but just the whole journey of cruising in became such more, just a more enjoyable experience, because I wasn't, totally wasted.
I think that's interesting when you said experience, and what Ryan was talking about with, when you were saying I had to take climbing gear and fishing gear and all that other gear. It reminded me actually of trail running, because some people, you'll trail run and people say, hey, take the time to, look around, and you're kind of like, yeah, but I get to see so much more than you, because if I have a 2-hour time frame and I'm running through this experience, I get to see way more. And that's the experience that I want. And when I'm lightweight, I can say, maybe I'm not here to climb and fish and do all these other things, but I want to travel farther. I want to see more, and I have that potential to see more with that. And to me, that makes it more fun also, is to have my options are opened up a lot more, and that makes it fun.
My journey into lightweight backpacking started sort of all based on the understanding that durability and quality is key. That's the most important thing. So those beautiful, wonderfully crafted leather boots that are just gorgeous, that was what I wanted. That was what meant, that was what backpacking was to me, that durable quality. The backpack itself had to have a wonderful structure to it, be built like a bomb shelter, the heaviest fabrics, so that I knew I would still be carrying that same backpack after 25 years.
Granite countertops and hardwood floors, right?
Yes, yeah, those are great. That's sort of where my backpacking was born, out of that mindset. And I think, as I think back and try to critique some of that, really, my choice of gear was driven not by what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go or even what my backpacking style was, but more what marketing was telling me I needed to purchase. And yes, those boots are beautiful, and that backpack is bomber, but it's not what I needed, not for what I was trying to do, not for what I wanted to do. And so I think as my mindset began to shift, it was mostly about recognizing I didn't need that sort of gear to do the sorts of things that I wanted to do. And so I began to be able to strip away a lot of the excess and begin to focus on a much smaller, more compact, more simple system that allowed me to get out more easily with the people that I loved, to be able to do so quickly, to not have to think through things as much. That's really my backpacking style. That's what I wanted to do. And so thinking through those things allowed me to begin trimming off all of these different things. And really it was more than trimming off, because it was a lot of excess weight that went out the door at that point.
Yeah, it's really good. I know for me personally, I started out wanting to learn everything I could about the gear, the skills, the practical side of ultralight backpacking. And once I had that dialed in, then I wanted to focus on performance. What could I do with this that I wasn't able to do before? And now, as I get older, I got my eyes on the idea that I want to do this as long as I live. And I know that as our bodies age, the ability to keep that body in good condition and not abuse it too badly is going to be critical to doing this. And seeing some of the people who were, in their 60s when the ultralight backpacking community kind of started out in the 90s, now still backpacking into their 80s has been really inspiring to me, because I would have never have even assumed that. And watching people come to ultralight backpacking in their retirement years where they haven't even backpacked before, but now they're picking it up because the gear and technology and the skills are available to them to start this activity at this age is super inspiring to me. So that leads me to my final question, which is, what's next for you guys on your ultralight backpacking journey? What do you want ultralight backpacking to be able to do for you in the next, let's say, 5 years?
Well, I think what I've currently been working on is you were chatting about kind of the getting older and still being able to enjoy backpacking, and I'm on the opposite end of that, which is as my kids are now entering the age where they can backpack, and so I've been on my journey trying to make a lot of my own gear and just enjoying the exploration in that. And I've been making a lot of gear for my kids, and within the next 5 years I'd like to continue just seeing my kids explore more and experience more, and as a parent, there's just it's hard to find something more enjoyable than seeing your kids floored to be experiencing this, and they get to do that with me, and I get to see it and experience it, and I just think that's amazing. And so with the ultralight methods, I'm able to, as a dad, get my kids out there without, one, me being totally wiped out, and two, my this year my 5 and my 8-year-old will be carrying a lot of their own stuff, and they're able to do so, and they're able to enjoy it and not get pounded into the ground, and as a family we get to explore it together and grow closer and experience it. So
wow, that's good. I mean, I didn't even think about that. But now I am. But now that I'm thinking about that. because one of the goals has always been for my wife and I is to get our kids out, but we want it to be fun. We don't want them to have this association with, oh, I'm outdoors and it's painful. I mean, sometimes it is, and I think as you get older, you want to push yourself and do more, but with your kids, you want it to be like, I'm outdoors and this is fun. And when it's lighter, it makes it more fun. And I know you didn't ask this question, Ryan, but the challenge that I face with it, though, is, I'm lucky enough that some companies have sent me some gear, but how do you get around it to where you don't have to spend so much money? I know that, Adam, you make a lot of your own gear, but a lot of it can be kind of pricey. So I know you didn't ask that, but that's kind of a challenge that I face, is how do you do it, and how do you outfit 2 or 3 kids with that gear? But if you can, I mean, where I'd like to go is, it's fun because now that you have the freedom and it's lighter, you don't just have to go a few miles. I'd like to do bigger trips, longer expeditions, and have longer experiences. And actually, I'd like to do it with my kids. So get my kids out, have them have a good experience, and potentially be with them on bigger expeditions, longer trips. That's where I see it going with me.
I'm in the same boat as both Adam and Kevin. My kids are right at that age where they're becoming very capable of going out and experiencing backpacking the same way I can. But I think if I were to step back and try to sum up what I want ultralight backpacking to do for me in the next 5 years, I would have to say I want ultralight backpacking to provide special time with other people, and that certainly means my wife and my kids. I also am trying to wrestle through how do I outfit my kids well and come up with a good system that works smoothly, that they can get a handle on quickly, and that is comfortable for them. But also, I want that to be the case with others as well, other friends, other people that I value. I want ultralight backpacking to be a catalyst for quality time with them, so that we can, at the drop of a hat, leave for a few days, take off for a little while, be able to spend time thinking and processing together. I think ultralight backpacking has that capability because it doesn't require nearly as much investment in terms of time and energy in order to enjoy the benefits.
I'm kind of with you on that one too. I've spent the last few years studying really how to decrease the time required to plan and execute a trip. We all live busy lives, and the lower the barrier is to actually get to the trailhead and start hiking, the better, and the more time we can spend out there. We fritter a lot of our free time away through various pursuits. It's different for everybody, but I know society is threatened today by things like social media and media consumption in general, and the ability to say, yeah, I've got time for this, I think has a huge impact on the potential for your relationships around you, especially with your families and close friends, if you guys can do this together. So that's where I'm going, is really try to simplify the entire process, including the amount of gear I own, the amount of time it takes to prepare for a trip, and so I can pack quickly and have the confidence that I have what I need, and for me that's going to be huge. So, well, great discussion, everyone. Thanks very much for the past few days in Montana with you all, and can't wait to do it again.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, Ryan, one of my favorite things about that conversation was when y'all started to touch on the idea of ultralight backpacking as a gateway into the outdoors for family and other loved ones who maybe don't have the same experience. My dad took my mom on a backpacking trip in the early '80s, when everything was canvas and heavy. And as far as I know, that's the last time she's ever done that. So I really like the idea of it being about having fun, especially for the family members.
Yeah, I think there's so much in the ultralight backpacking culture about solo travel. And I'll be the first to say there's some huge benefits to going solo just for your personal well-being and spirituality and things like that. But participating in a backpacking trip with somebody else, especially when you kind of strip the weight down and it's a relaxed, enjoyable trip, it does a lot for the relationship. And I think a lot of it is because you are out in this absolutely amazing place, this wilderness, and there's no drama from civilization infecting your lives there, and you really have the chance to get to know somebody and really enjoy them on a very simple level. And that type of company is just beautiful.
The other thing I liked, and it was touched on just at the very end, was one of the guides was doing some thinking about, the affordability of ultralight backpacking. And I know for a lot of people, myself included, there's kind of a little bit of a barrier there, I think, in terms of how affordable some of this gear is. And it didn't sound like he had a solution beyond making your own gear, but that's an idea I'd really love to explore a little more fully.
Yeah, me too. And I think we're going to have to address this in a podcast episode of its own at some point, because it's if ultralight backpacking is all about titanium, carbon fiber, and Dyneema composite fabrics, then it's not cheaper than anything else. And it doesn't make sense that lighter gear should be more expensive, although, backpacking's not unique in this marketplace, and you look at saving weight on anything, whether it's fishing gear or race cars, the light stuff is always more expensive. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I think it would be good to say this: you can go as light as possible and spend a lot of money, or you can go almost as light as possible and spend very little. And there's not a huge gap between those two weight ranges, but there's a massive gap in expense. And so that's definitely a theme I would like to explore in the future.
Yeah. Oh, well, what stuck out to you about the conversation?
Just how you got 4 people who've been tasked to teach skills and to teach people about gear. And the way the conversation evolved was really the softer side of ultralight. It's about philosophy and values and relationships and things like that. And at its deepest level, I think that's the real benefit of minimalism applied to any activity, is just stripping away everything to get to the essence of what it's all about. And for these guys, what it's all about is experience in nature and experience with the people that they're with in nature.
Well, let's move on into the next segment where we talk about gear. Ryan, you recently spent some time with the Garmin inReach Mini, and you really liked it.
I am enamored with this little device. So I've been an inReach user for several years. I found myself taking it less and less on trips, mainly because of its size and weight. I mean, it's a half-pound brick that arguably most of the function can be accomplished, with a cell phone and the maps you have on your phone, because it's a very capable GPS. But the real benefit of the whole inReach system is the ability to have two-way satellite messaging between you and somebody back home. And for me, I like staying connected, particularly with my wife, to let her know what's going on, where we are and things like that. But secondarily, also when I have to stay in touch with the office back home to manage a few minor things that might be going on, that, it allows me to get out and go on a trip when otherwise I might have to stay in the office. So that's always a huge benefit for me. What I like about the inReach is that you've got this miniaturized device now that pairs very well with a smartphone. so that you get all the features on the smartphone, but the actual satellite messaging device is half the size and weight of what the old inReach was. And I think it's a huge step forward in backcountry electronics, and especially in making satellite communications accessible to more people.
So it pairs over the Bluetooth?
It does. It has a Bluetooth connection to the smartphone. You don't have to use it. The inReach Mini is capable of operating its full suite of features on its own, except mapping. That's the main difference between the inReach and the inReach Mini, is that the Mini doesn't have a large enough screen or high enough resolution for, to view color maps and things like that. So it's a kind of a text only screen. And then you use your smartphone for mapping and marking waypoints and things like that. I mean, you can use the smartphone to have the full interface into what the inReach Mini can do.
So does this device have any kind of drawbacks? Did you notice anything negative about it?
Yeah, if you're using just the device and you're not pairing it to a smartphone and you're wanting to message people, typing on a pseudo virtual keyboard that requires literally several hundred clicks of a button to compose a text message is a nightmare. And so that alone is almost worth having a smartphone with you so that you can use the smartphone's keyboard to compose messages. The other thing is, again, it doesn't have mapping on it. So I use the smartphone paired to it for actual mapping. And that gives you full color, high res maps that you download before your trip. And so I've got, USGS topo layers and aerial imagery layers, and that's all accessible via the phone interface, which is really nice.
And what's the price tag on this?
The inReach Mini retails for $350, and then the service plans range anywhere from $12 on up, depending on how frequently you use messaging and tracking and things like that.
Okay, and available now?
It is, yeah. It was released just a couple of weeks ago. REI.com is probably has the biggest inventory right now. I've noticed it started to trickle out to a few other retailers and sold out from them pretty quick, but REI's looks like it's managed to maintain inventory. And you can check out, we have a comprehensive review of the little mini on backpackinglight.com. It's about 8,500 words. It goes into very great detail about its performance and its features, and kind of walks you through how to shop for a service plan and things like that. So yeah, check it out. It's linked from the homepage.
All right. Well, hopefully I can get my hands on one soon. I really want one.
It's a great little device.
Well, let's move on into here and now. This is a segment where we share a little bit about what we're currently studying, learning about, testing, or planning when it comes to our backpacking gear, skills, and activities. So Ryan, what do you have going on right now?
Well, Chase and I just returned from the snowy range in Wyoming, backpacking for a few days. Stephanie had a friend visit from Montana, and so we decided to exit the house and let them have their girl time, and we had our guy time up in the mountains. And so we just kind of winged it and didn't do any pre-planning or anything like that. We just parked at a trailhead, hiked over a ridge, left the trail, and went from there. And so we had a chance to kind of stay off trail most of the trip, skirted the edge of a big mountain ridge and circumnavigated that through high alpine meadows and lakes. And we had the chance to do some fishing, and it was a really beautiful trip. So the snowy range is kind of our home alpine range, and it's only, the trailhead's only about 40 minutes from our house, and we're able to park, like right at 11,000 feet and get into the alpine tundra right away. So it's a pretty spectacular environment.
Well, that sounds amazing. And you also have some trekking poles gear guide coming up, right?
We're researching the trekking pole market right now and screening what amounts to be at least 100 different models from major manufacturers. And then there's a whole mess of trekking poles that are distributed on Amazon.com under various brands that all look to be the same few models from China. And so we're trying to kind of weed some of those out and figure out who is producing original trekking poles and who's just putting their brand on stuff. So that's a big project right now. I have an office full of trekking poles to review and look at and test. And and that gear guide is being written, and hopefully get that out pretty soon. But it's interesting to me to see, as we do this market survey and analyze all these poles, they're fairly heavy. There's still not a lot of options for people who really want to save weight. And so we were really hoping that this new technology that allows you to create like the Black Diamond Z poles, which are the tent pole kind of construction with the plastic, so-called draw cords. And
they sort of unfold.
Yeah, they're full. Yeah, folding trekking poles is the right description of them, and really hoping that these would like save weight. But now all these manufacturers are coming out with these folding poles that are in the 14 to 20 ounce range per pair. So there's not a lot of weight saved there. That said, there are some manufacturers who are being very intentional about minimizing the weight of those designs, and so there are some good options out there. But for the most part, the average trekking pole weighs 16 to 18 ounces, and then you've got the burly end of the range that they kind of market for expeditions, or they're cheaper, and so they use heavier aluminum, and they're 18 to 22 ounces or so per pair. And then you've got this lightweight range that is 15 ounces and less, and that's really where we're going to focus most of our energy.
Will this survey take into account like durability over time? Because that's something I'm always interested in with trekking poles, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's two issues with that. One is the shaft material and its ability to resist nicks and abrasion and repeated flex and things like that. But the real issue is the ferrules, how those poles are joined. Ferrules are notorious failure points for trekking poles, and so we're gonna go pretty deep into ferrule design and engineering and make some recommendations based on that.
Do you use trekking poles in your personal ultralight backpacking life?
I do. I'm on and off with them. The trekking poles I have used and owned for many years are no longer available. They're a Black Diamond Razor Carbon. They're a 2-piece, and they have the flick lock connector. I've never had a single issue with those poles, and they have hundreds and hundreds of miles on them. And I have used almost every type of trekking pole on the market here and there, and I keep going back to those. And I think I do it because they're really durable. They are a carbon pole, but they're more durable. They're the only carbon pole I've ever owned that hasn't broken, and that's the only issue with the thinner ultralight carbon fiber poles at the lower end of the weight spectrum, is their shafts are not so durable, especially if you're carrying a heavy pack and need to support body weight to catch a fall, or you're going off trail and you're getting the tip stuck in mud or rocks or anything like that, and then you risk breaking that lower part of that pole. So, which I've done numerous times through the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I use trekking poles too, mostly because I just like to have something to do with my hands.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot, and I'm the same way. But I think on trips where I'm primarily shooting video, I usually leave them at home because I have my camera and a strap around my neck, and I want that accessible all the time with both hands. So it's kind of a pain if you're a run and gun photographer to have to deal with trekking poles every time you want to take a shot. So whenever I'm doing video, I tend to leave them at home. And then, I have to remember, most of the shelters I use are trekking pole supported. So I have to remember to bring a second pole or a secondary pole to support the shelter.
Right. I've always wished that someone would invent a really good system that you can store a trekking pole easily out of your way without taking your pack off.
Yeah. So a quiver, you need a quiver of some type. Yeah. The ability to reach behind your pack and grab a strap is problematic. A lot of times what I've done, especially if I do have a camera and I'm taking trekking poles, is I will take the 2 poles and put them right behind my head, kind of in the nook where the shoulder straps are.
Right.
And if I'm walking at all, I may even thread them through the shoulder straps. And yeah, you can feel it on your collarbone a little bit as you walk, but you can get away with short periods of time doing this. So that's kind of what's going on with me. How about you, Andrew? What's going on in your life right now?
Well, got a lot going on. Rachel and I are prepping to move to California into the North Lake Tahoe area, so that's very exciting.
Nice.
It's a big change from where we are now in the Southwest, and I'm really looking forward to the immediacy of the outdoor opportunities there. Kind of just walking out your front door and going backpacking or hiking or paddle boarding or swimming or skiing or any of the other hundreds of things you can do up there. So that's very exciting.
Have you recreated in the Tahoe area before?
I have not. I've never been there.
You'll fall in love with the Tahoe Rim Trail. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, that's definitely on my list, and also just how close that area is to the PCTs got me eyeballing a possible 2019 thru-hike.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's just kind of an idea at the moment. I haven't even really started the initial research, but it's definitely in the back of my head, and I'll see if I can convince any of my old AT friends to join me for the adventure.
Oh, that's great. So when was your AT hike?
That was 2012, so it's been a while.
Okay, great. Well, that'd be pretty exciting if you can pull that off. What are the main logistical challenges for you right now?
Probably the same thing every thru hiker has to deal with, which is how to either save up enough money to do this without throwing your life into total chaos, or generate an income while you're on the trail in some way.
Sure.
So that's always the biggest logistical thing for me.
What sort of style would you do this hike in? Would it be super fast? Would it be pretty slow and leisurely, or something in between?
Well, I wouldn't say super fast, but I tend towards fast because, again, I'm always trying to fit these things into my existing life. So I'm out there to enjoy the outdoors and to walk and to experience the spiritual side of all this. But I'm also kind of acutely aware of the fact that I have a family and responsibilities, back at home. So spending 5 months doing this is really not on the table. It's got to be shorter than that for me.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
On the other hand, I'm not a fan of the fastest known time concept. I don't like idolizing that. I know that kind of gets into some tricky territory, but that's just kind of a personal philosophy. So there's a middle ground for me, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
For sure. No, I totally get the motivation to do as much as possible in a shorter period of time.
Yeah.
Well, great. Good chatting with you today, Andrew.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get this episode published.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be a good one. Well, just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the podcast. This podcast is brought to you by backpackinglight.com, which has been providing information and education about lightweight wilderness travel since the year 2000. This podcast is supported by subscription fees paid by our website subscribers, and we are very grateful for your support. If you're interested in a backpackinglight.com subscription, which can save you time and money on your quest to lighten your pack weight, spend time in the outdoors, and connect with a community of like-minded hikers, check out our website. You can subscribe, and by doing so, you'll gain access to nearly 1 million forum posts, 4 million words of original content, and more than 2,000 articles, plus access to our Wilderness Adventures trekking program. You can subscribe online right now at backpackinglight.com/subscribe.
If you have feedback, questions, or tips for our listeners, please share them via email at podcast@backpackinglight.com. You can download the show notes for this episode by visiting backpackinglight.com/podcast. And you can get this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, SoundCloud, and YouTube. And be sure to leave us a review, especially on iTunes. It helps other people find the show.
Thanks for listening to the Backpacking Light podcast. I'm Andrew Marshall.
And I'm Ryan Jordan. And if we can leave you with one parting message, it's this: pack less, be more, because lighter is better. Happy trails, everybody.
So I shoulder my backpack, walk away from the